All right, well, g'day there. Richard Musgrave-Evans here again, and welcome back. Now today, we're back in the studio after doing, well, plenty of plein air work over the last couple of months, as you would have seen if you'd watched the videos. I was out yesterday. It was a beautiful day on the river. Fantastic, not a breath of wind, and these cliffs were just big, raw, chunky cliffs. And I didn't have the right linen with me at the time. I thought this will be beautiful if I get the really coarse Belgian linen, the thick weave, because I felt like the cliffs were so chunky and so ochre in colour that if I used this coarse Belgian linen, it would really lend itself to it. Now I've got a clear primer on that, so it's all sealed, everything's good. And now I'm going to use buckets of oil paint, big palette knives, and lay it on chunky style here with lovely smooth water, try and get the contrast between the water and the cliffs and whatever else. Let's see how we go with this one. We'll have a quick look at the colours. Viridian green, magenta, a little bit of phthalo blue, plenty of ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, a nice red, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and buckets of titanium white. Now that should be enough. Let's get into it. First I'll put in a few shadows just to get the draftsmanship correct, and then we'll go from there. All right, now I'll knock up some colours here, the darkest darks. We'll go for some alizarin crimson, maybe some viridian green with that. That usually makes a pretty good dark. Alright, so we'll just block out a few things. I've just got some very fine grey lead lines there just to get me started, and now I'll get into it. I probably need a few, she's a little bit pumpy, I've just noticed. Should have put some wedges in the back, but anyway, we'll just work with it. Okay. There's the darks there. A bit more alizarin crimson on that one. Alizarin crimson, viridian green. Now this coarse Belgian linen does chew a fair bit of paint, but once you've got enough paint on, the end result is absolutely beautiful. Okay, I might go for a bit of ultramarine blue, change tack, a bit of magenta. It's a very dark dark. Throw a bit of a shadow here from the tree on the hill. Maybe go for a bit of burnt sienna now as well. All those darks. Just going to lightly scrape a bit of that in. Just find out where I want the edge of that. That can be about there. And go about there. So that'll be the rugged, fully sunlit cliff. And the concept of this painting, like I said, is going to be about the contrast between that real chunkiness and the super softness of this one. And I'll keep that in mind throughout the picture. That's always the concept. Beautiful reflections, because on the day that I was there, as soon as I saw that, there was not a breath of wind and the reflections were just beautiful with this Australian harsh sunlight on the cliffs and chunky rocks. So that is the concept I'm going to keep. Let me just stand back, have a look and see what I think. Beautiful stuff, eh? Look at that cliff. It's not too bad, maybe just a couple more darks. We'll just get a bit more alizarin crimson, viridian green. Just make sure I've got this dark in here where I want a bit more of that, a bit more of that. Yeah. Alright, now I'll mix up. The interesting part is the water was green, so that green was reflecting back into the shadows here, and making the shadows this type of green as well, a beautiful green type of shadow. So we'll go burnt sienna, viridian green, a bit of yellow ochre to try and go for that. That type of pale green shadow, a bit more yellow ochre. That's almost the colour of the water there, that'll be the water. This value is about the colour of the water, I would say, so we'll go there because the water is a slightly weaker version, it's a pale version of it. That'll come in there. Now we'll go darker again, burnt sienna, viridian green, yellow ochre. Maybe a bit more of this ultramarine blue to knock it back, get it darker again. It's gone down a value since it's darker. Pretty good. Yeah, it's kind of weird with this canvas. I should have tightened it before I started. Being out in the hot weather, because I was out yesterday, oh actually, if you pull any of these things around the back of your trailer in the middle of summer, which it is here, it gets quite hot, yellow ochre. And the heat dries the canvas or linen out, which also tends to make it looser. Burnt sienna. You get that back in a humid environment and will actually go tight again. And that's the benefit of having the wedges on the back. You can vary how tight and loose depending on what the weather's doing. Nice. Solid all the way through there. There's no light getting through. Now just put a bit more up here. It's coming along nicely. I might just stand back and have a look, see what I've got, eh? Right, that's all good, let's keep going. Yellow ochre will get back into this water reflection, the reflection on the water. Burnt sienna, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, yellow ochre. That's a nice colour. You see what we've got here. Pretty good. Get that coverage on. Yellow ochre, burnt sienna, pretty and green. Yellow ochre. Scoop that up. Getting there. It's going on lovely. Up to the edges. Yeah, I like painting on this linen and having the clear primer because you get that beautiful raw colour, and the cliff was very much that colour, so I feel like it really lends itself to keeping the canvas looking raw. Alright, stand back and have a look. Alright, I'm going to change tack here and go for the sky now, go for the biggest differences. We've got all that in, that's nearly the same colour anyway. Let's get that sky in. We'll go for some ultramarine blue and white. Maybe a bit of phthalo blue as well down lower. That's a slightly green blue. The ultramarine's got the red content. I might even go for a bit of magenta. I'm just trying to, and burnt sienna, I'm just trying to grey it ever so slightly. So it's not the absolute pure chromatic saturation. It's been knocked back a little bit by some burnt sienna, which is opposite on the colour wheel. Just have a look. This is down low because there is a little bit of atmosphere going on. Close on correct. Looks beautiful against that raw linen like that. I like the look of that. Okay, we'll just go up a level. So we'll go for some more ultramarine, more phthalo, more white, but slightly less white than there was before. It's going nice. Beautiful sky. It'll come through there and go up there like that, I reckon. Today. About there. That looks good. And it'll be up through there. It's quite interesting to paint on this coarse stuff. It has a completely different feel than painting on board, for example, which has no texture. The more texture, it's just different. Now there's a little bit, tiny little, yeah, I won't put that in yet. All right. Well, that's working well, so let's go for more white, more ultramarine, way more ultramarine blue, to get it darker. Beautiful, deep, dark, full Australian lit sky. The sky can be very intense up high in Australia, real deep blue, particularly if you've got some warm ochre cliffs that you're down here looking up. The ochre cliffs tend to make the sky look bluer. That's better. All right, so that's going on pretty good. Take that up. It's looking Lovely. Blend that as we go. It blends very easy. That's one thing. The coarser linen is easier to blend with just a knife instead of having to use a brush. It seems to blend together with less effort, probably because the coarseness is grabbing the paint off the knife and dragging it off the knife easier. So, and then when you move it around like so, the paint is gripping to the surface more, so you get more of a blend effect very easily instead of slipping and sliding like a roller skating rink where you just, or an ice skating rink I should say, where you're just slipping and sliding on the slippery surface. Okay, a bit more ultramarine. And just remember, I want to do a little bit down low. There's just a little bit in the water. I'll drag a bit of green with it because it has been, the green water is dominating the colour a little bit. A bit more ultramarine. What we got here? That'll be about there, I would say. It's not too much, a bit more blue to darken the value, see? And just put that in there. It's mainly going to be the reflection of the cliff, but there is, I'm going to go for some slight green versions again, and magenta. Mix that up, a bit more ultramarine blue. I'm just trying to knock it back a bit so it's a keyed down version of the sky. It's not completely as strong as that. Something along those lines will do it. Alright, let's go back to this other thing we're doing. Ultramarine blue, magenta as we go higher. A bit more white so it'll go a bit further. More magenta. What value we got there? Slightly darker. Oops, got a bit of dark paint there, we won't matter, we'll just keep blending that in, that'll be alright. It all goes together. Keep going with that ultramarine, it seems to be working out well. Bit of magenta to make it slightly more red as we go up another level. Of course we're going to need white, but not as much white as before. Bit of magenta and white, it's a beautiful red blue as it goes up. It's looking good. What do we got? Nice and deep blue colour. Lovely stuff. It's going on nicely. Keep on going. Look at that, beautiful stuff. Almost there with the sky. Almost got what we want. Just getting those edges lovely and neat. Beautiful. Okay, just blend it in a bit. It's okay down so that they come in and blend beautifully next to each other. All those subtle colour variances get blended lovely. There we go, we'll just leave it for that for now. And then we'll get stuck into some other different stuff, which will be getting the cliff done, getting the subtle light and shadow and whatever else. Okay. All right, I'll go for a bit of coverage, so let's get that on first. White, burnt sienna, it's a very high key, yellow ochre, bit of magenta and blue with that. I'm going to grey it ever so slightly so it's not just pure strong colours. It needs more white, it needs to be very light value, more yellow ochre for the sunlit colour. Plenty more white, that's beautiful, look at that. So pasty. Beautiful and pasty stuff. Isn't that just fantastic? Look at that. Let's just lay some on, see what we get. So that value is too light. Use that in a minute. We'll keep on going. Next to it, burnt sienna. Going to use less white this time because I want it to be a darker value. So I'm going more burnt sienna, more of the yellow ochre, less of the white, a bit of blue to grey it, a bit of magenta if it's gone too green. Let's have a look at that one. That's better. See, that's a darker value. It's gone one shade down. Start dragging that in. Put that on. We'll do a bit more of that. Burnt sienna, yellow ochre. Bit of those blues thrown into grey it. Oops, a bit too much magenta. Don't worry, we'll just add more blue. We need plenty of paint anyway, so I'll just keep adding as we're going. More burnt sienna. That's a nice low-key version so far. Good. Yep. Going on all right. Just realised I need a bit more burnt sienna, so let's just put some of that on. Lovely stuff. Alright, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, viridian green, making a lovely kind of khaki foliage colour. Here's a bit more green maybe, a bit more yellow ochre. Let's just see what we got here before we get too carried away. Yeah. Well done there, bit there. Okay, bit of blue here to grey it off a bit. Use the ultramarine blue. Change the value because there's a few foliage bits here, but they're not the same type of tree, so they're a slightly different colour. Maybe a little bit of, just lighten that. A bit more yellow ochre, I'm going to lighten the value. There's so many subtle changes you're constantly making for different things. Yellow ochre, viridian green. Foliage is slightly lighter like that. Let's get those foliage bits on and then get stuck into getting, we've got that colour there of the cliff, but now I want the reflected colour of the cliff, which has got more of a watercolour with it, that greenish colour. Alright, well, let's have a look at this. I think I've found the best spot in the world. Look at that water. That water is just like glass. Unbelievably clear. Alright, so that will be more of those greens mixed with these colours. A bit more of a green version. Let me just see what I've got first. See how it's keyed down. Because the water's green, it's a very kind of pale colour. Keep applying that. A bit more viridian green, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, burnt sienna. See what we got here. Something along those lines. Right, let's get that paint on. Once I've got the value right, start putting it on. Good. I've got that on. Now let's put some of these highlights. We've got all the kind of deeper shadow versions. But what we've also got, I'll just blend this together a bit. What we've also got There's some lovely highlights now where the sun's hitting direct, not just this kind of middle tone. We've got the real high key stuff. Let's put that on. So that will be a mixture of more white and yellow ochre. I've already got plenty of light values here, but I think I need a bit more yellow ochre and a bit more white, a bit more of the sun colour. I'm using yellow ochre as that kind of sunlit colour today. I love yellow ochre for that thing, that type of thing. It's light value, yeah. Blocker on. Stick it on here. Big chunks of paint, beautiful stuff. A bit more yellow ochre and white. Some kicking around here, a bit more white with that. And yellow ochre. A big chunk down here. Stick that on. It's going on lovely. Got sedimentary layers running through the hill too. I can see there's like lines like this. It runs through like so, the old ancient seabed, whatever it was in this particular case. I think that's the case. Different layers. Right, there's a light source. We'll go for a slightly keyed down version so we'll get more of this stuff. Because in the water, the reflected version, can be slightly keyed down, like so. A bit lighter. More yellow ochre. And it'll be there, reflection of that one. Let me just stand back and see what I've got here. Just have a look. Bit of bird life and whatever right down low in those little caves. Just going to go for a few more darks again. I've got that lovely shadow colour just here, which is more of a mid-tone. What I'm after is a little bit more of the darkest darks. So get all the light values off the knife. We'll go for some alizarin crimson. I'm running out of room here. I'll have to clean the palette up a bit in a minute. Some ultramarine blue. Start knocking some in. Little lateral marks, maybe a bit more burnt center than that. A bit more alizarin. Lovely warm values so they contrast. By using the red, you're getting warm values contrasting with that pale green shadow. Alright, well the basic overriding values are starting to get there now. You can see the chunky cliff and the reflection which is mimicking it, but in a weaker version of the light and shadow that we have here. So that's all working out well, but now we need to convince the eyes that this is realism a little more. So what we do is, we've got the big chunks in, let's start refining it with a smaller knife and a few more whatever and give the illusion of realism. Alright, so we'll go for some white and yellow ochre, a nice light value. Just keep on pushing some of these things around. Chunk there, a bit more of that white. Yellow ochre, where do I want this? Nice thick paint laid on beautifully with a knife on edge. Knife on edge, just release. There also will be a little bit coming here and there. Through the hill itself, there's also the same thing, echoing it. Not to the same extent as right here. This is where the lightest value of rocks are, but there are definitely sedimentary layers through here, echoing the intensity of this one, but not quite as strong. So we'll put some of that in. Nice. Yep. That's good. Of course we have the opposite here, and a weaker version, a reflected water version. So everything is suggested in a much weaker way, but it's still there. Good. All right, just get the bigger knife out again, put a bit more of these colours on. Maybe a bit more through here, that's it. Lovely stuff. Just going to break it up a little, make some of the marks a bit more varied. Also get some of these dark values, because these little rocks on the ridge creating really dark small shadows here and there, just little bits and pieces. Just get this knife now, just wobble through here to soften these reflections. We want them to be a softer version of the harshness of the cliff. The cliff's very harsh. We want this stuff to all be soft, little ripples on the water and whatever else. Beautiful and clear, but little ripples. Wipe the knife clean. Pull that through. Dance the knife around. Little marks here and there. Alright, slightly smaller knife. I'm just going to get some of these darker colours that we've got here, these beautiful, put some of the sedimentary layers that are running through, put some of them in, like so. Go for the slightly lighter version in the water. Wipe it clean. Darker version. Bit of that dark there too. Take her up into there. It's coming along, we're getting there. I'll stick a bit of branch work and whatever in the tree in a minute. Good, now get some light values again. We'll use some white, maybe a bit of cad colour this time to really intensify it. Some nice white. Just going to really put some fine accents here where the light is meeting places. Maybe a nice branch here, nice trunk with the knife on edge, bending it through like so. Coming the opposite way for the reflection, like that, lovely. Just lightening off little bits to really pull your eye in, like so. Go for some pure white, some cad yellow. Make it a little bit brighter here. The sediment layers. Getting there. Alright, I might just come in, put the knife on edge, pull it through a little, bring that down. Just going to try and blur some of these edges a bit. one step back and then two step forwards. That's the idea. I'm just trying to soften a little bit as well. We'll pull that through. Building hardened, soft, lost and found. I'll harden some of the edges up again in a minute. But what I'm trying to do is get that beautiful feeling of hardened, soft, lost and found. That's just amazing stuff, I can't believe it. No wind. We're reeling it in, reeling it in. Let's just get a smaller knife now and work some of those finer details. Get some pure white again, some high key cad for that full sunlit colour. Knife on edge. Draw a few fine branches. It'll suggest all of a sudden that there's refinement. Your eyes will go to those refining marks and say this must be a finished painting with detail, because those marks are so small and refined. So it tricks your brain into thinking there's a lot more detail than there actually is. Knife on edge. Just want to clean that line up a bit. So I'll wipe my knife clean, come in from the other side and take a bit of paint off if I can. That's it. Half mixing the cads and the whites, getting some nice pop there. A knife on edge. Knife on edge again. Pulling up those refining details. Keep the knife clean, constantly cleaning the knife. More of those cads. There we go again. Weaker version in the reflection. Knife on edge. On edge. Right, change tack. Let's get some of these dark values here. The burnt siennas, alizarin crimson, magentas, all those dark things with a bit of blue to grey it. Let's build up some of the grain in this hill here. Little bits of shadow from that sun directly overhead and those rocky landscapes casting those little shadows, just catching here and there to give that feeling. Not too much, just enough. Picking up subtler stuff. Come in here with a dark clean shadow. Got the knife on edge. These shadows got a little bit more green back in them because we're dealing with closer to the water, so we're getting that reflection coming up. Up here, that's not getting any of the reflection of the water, so it's a darker colour. It's not getting that beautiful green coming back in. All right, well, things are really starting to come along now. We're getting that big impression. Lovely reflections in here. Beautiful light and shadow. That pale green reflecting off the water back up. Beautiful little refining marks. Now I'm just going to put, I notice I've got these lovely light coloured foliage on the tree. I'm just going to put a little bit of shadow version, like a really dark version, because you've got high lit sun going on here. And you need small shadows like we've got here, just a few kicking around. So we'll get maybe viridian green, Go for some of that red, make a real dark one. If we want some accents here, real dark values. A little bit more red than that, less green dominant. Put it on the underside like so. We'll go for a tad more green. Let's just get a bit more green than that. Just little marks, not too many, because we're trying to create that feeling of shadow, but because it's directly overhead sunlight, there's not a lot of shadow around, but it is quite dark, the shadow that is there. All right, getting there. Let's get some high key stuff, get some white, yellow accent. Put some power in here. Some brightness like that to really start to pull your eyes into certain areas. Beautiful stuff, eh? Look at that cliff. That worked well. Now we'll get more of this white. CAD. Knife on edge. Lay a nice piece of colour in there. A few more branches here and there to really make it pop. Get some accenting going. That's nice, yep. All right, well, I reckon we should leave it at that. I reckon I've got the big impression now. I'm pretty happy with what's going on here. I feel like I've caught that first impression on the day, which was yesterday, when I went out there. This is the first time I'd seen this scene, and it was hot and it was full sunlight, and I came over the ridge and I saw these beautiful sun-bleached cliffs, and I saw this tranquil water with not a breath of wind on, and I couldn't believe the contrast in the full sun between these chunky chunkies and this soft, beautiful reflection. And the way that that green water was reflecting back up into the shadows of the cliffs and giving that pale green shadow. It was such a beautiful thing. So I feel like I've actually caught the essence, the concept of that day. Chunky rocks, soft water, green shadows, full sunlight. Pretty happy with the way I've dealt with the technique. Up close, when we get the camera off, you can come in and have a look. Got these beautiful soft marks here like so, wiggling and all to give the illusion of little tiny ripples on the water. At the same time, really big chunky marks in the rocks here. The nice highlights here to pick out the edge between the light and shadow. In here, the darks, because this is a pale green shadow, the darks, I've made them a dark red. So that's the opposite on the colour wheel. So you've got the green and the red as the darks in here really dancing against each other, that warm and cool contrast. The illusion of detail with a few fine lines and spots and dots, all working to make the painting feel more finished. Some really dark little shadows just on the hill because it's in full sunlight, and you've just got rocks everywhere, but they're small. Well, because it's directly overhead, we're not getting the big shadows, so we've got these really dark, small little shadows everywhere, just to give the feeling of that chunky, rocky landscape against the softness. All right, so on the whole, pretty happy. Why don't we get that camera off now? We'll come buzzing right in. You guys can have a look and see what you think. All right, thank you.